When the armed intruder entered Lincoln High School with 2,000 students inside, school security officer Sarah Davis was supposed to lock down and wait for police response. Instead, she immediately began implementing active shooter neutralization protocols with the precision of someone who had spent 12 years as a Secret Service counter-assault team leader, revealing that their school security guard wasn't just protection. She was a former elite federal agent whose tactical training had defended presidents from the world's most dangerous threats. Sarah Davis had been working as head of security at Lincoln High School for 4 years. And in that time, she'd become more than just a guard. She'd become a trusted protector of the 2,000 students and 150 faculty members who made the school one of the region's most successful educational institutions. The sprawling campus served students from diverse backgrounds, providing college preparatory programs, vocational training, and extracurricular activities that prepared young people for successful futures. At 38, Sarah carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who understood that protecting students required both tactical awareness and genuine care for the educational mission that made schools essential to community success. She was built like someone who maintained peak physical condition for demanding protection work, but her approach to school security emphasized relationship building and threat prevention rather than intimidation. Students respected her fair but firm leadership, and faculty trusted her judgment about complex safety situations that could affect the entire school community. The high school itself was a modern educational facility, multiple buildings connected by covered walkways, sophisticated communication systems linking every classroom, and security protocols designed to balance student safety with the open learning environment that effective education required. During school hours, it housed the equivalent of a small city, with complex logistics that required careful coordination between education and security priorities. What made Sarah different from typical school security officers was her ability to distinguish genuine threats from routine disciplinary issues and teenage behavioral problems. While other school security focused on student misconduct and visitor management, Sarah found herself automatically conducting threat assessments, analyzing behavioral indicators, and recognizing the warning signs that could predict when external threats might target educational institutions. Her colleagues often remarked on her unusual tactical awareness, the way she positioned herself during large school events, her systematic approach to emergency drills, and her comprehensive understanding of security vulnerabilities that most people would never consider. They attributed it to exceptional professional training and natural protective instincts, never suspecting that her expertise came from years of protecting the nation's highest officials from assassination attempts and terrorist attacks. The school district had experienced increased security concerns over the past year, including anonymous threats, suspicious activities around campus, and the kind of generalized anxiety about school safety that had become unfortunately common in American education. The emergency began at 10:15 a.m. during second period, when an armed individual breached the school's main entrance and began moving through the hallways, with obvious hostile intent toward students and faculty. The intruder was heavily armed and demonstrated knowledge of the school's layout that suggested planning and reconnaissance rather than impulsive violence. Sarah's Secret Service counter-assault team training activated immediately. While other school personnel followed lockdown procedures and waited for law enforcement response, Sarah was analyzing the threat from the perspective of someone who understood tactical response to armed attacks against high-value targets and protected individuals. The attack wasn't random school violence. It demonstrated sophisticated planning, tactical movement, and operational knowledge that indicated someone who had studied the school's security procedures and emergency response protocols. The intruder was using coordinated movement techniques and tactical equipment that suggested military or law enforcement training. Sarah realized that this wasn't just school violence. It was a targeted attack against an educational institution that required immediate tactical intervention to prevent mass casualties among students and faculty who had no training for violent encounters. Her Secret Service experience had taught her that active shooter situations required aggressive tactical response rather than passive defensive measures. The intruder's approach confirmed Sarah's assessment. The attacker was using tactical movement, room-clearing techniques, and operational methods that exceeded typical school violence patterns. This was organized violence targeting students and educators, requiring federal law enforcement tactical response and the kind of active shooter training that only Secret Service counter-assault teams possessed. While school emergency protocols called for lockdown and evacuation procedures, Sarah's federal training told her that protecting 2,000 students from an active shooter required tactical intervention that could neutralize the threat before law enforcement arrival, when seconds could mean the difference between safety and tragedy. Sarah's Secret Service counter-assault team expertise allowed her to make tactical decisions that other school security couldn't. She understood active shooter response methodologies, tactical neutralization techniques, and the specialized training required for protecting large groups of civilians from armed attacks. Her first priority was preventing the shooter from accessing areas with the highest student populations, particularly classrooms where students were trapped with no escape routes. Sarah's experience with counter-assault team operations had taught her that active shooter situations required aggressive tactical intervention to disrupt the attacker's operational plan and protect potential victims. Using her knowledge of tactical movement combined with Secret Service training, Sarah began implementing active shooter response procedures that could neutralize the threat while coordinating with arriving law enforcement who would need tactical intelligence about the situation and the intruder's capabilities. Sarah's communication with emergency responders demonstrated expertise that exceeded normal school security training. She was providing tactical analysis of the shooter's movement patterns, operational assessment of threat capabilities, and protective intelligence that helped law enforcement understand the specific methods needed for successful intervention. The most critical moment came when Sarah identified that the shooter was moving toward the cafeteria, where over 400 students were gathered for lunch period. Her counter-assault team training allowed her to intercept the attacker using tactical movement and intervention techniques that could protect students while engaging a hostile threat in a school environment. Her approach to the active shooter demonstrated the kind of tactical precision that characterized Secret Service counter-assault team operations. Sarah understood tactical movement, threat neutralization, and the specialized techniques required for protecting civilian populations from armed attacks in complex building environments. When law enforcement tactical teams arrived, they found Sarah had already neutralized the threat, protected all students and faculty from harm, and provided tactical intelligence about the incident that enabled comprehensive investigation of the attack methods and planning that had enabled the breach of school security. Officer Davis, your active shooter response exceeded anything we'd expect from civilian school security, said FBI Tactical Response Team Leader Special Agent Michael Rodriguez as federal investigators secured the scene. Your understanding of tactical intervention and threat neutralization suggests serious federal law enforcement training. How did you neutralize an active shooter with that level of expertise? Sarah's response stunned everyone present. I spent 12 years as a Secret Service counter-assault team leader conducting tactical operations and protective details for presidential security. When I left federal service, I wanted to continue protecting people, but I never expected to use my tactical training to defend students from the same kinds of threats that target government officials. The investigation revealed that Sarah's tactical analysis had been completely accurate. The shooter had planned a coordinated attack using methods that matched active shooter protocols that the Secret Service had identified in threats against government facilities and high-profile targets. Lincoln High School principal Dr. Jennifer Martinez realized she had been employing a former Secret Service counter-assault team commander as routine school security. Sarah, you're not just school security. You're a federal tactical specialist whose training just saved the lives of 2,000 students and prevented what could have been a devastating tragedy. FBI agent Rodriguez was particularly impressed by Sarah's ability to neutralize an active shooter while protecting civilian students. The tactical response you provided demonstrated counter-assault team training that enabled intervention capabilities we wouldn't expect outside of federal protective details. Your actions prevented mass casualties and provided tactical intelligence that helped us understand sophisticated attack planning. What amazed federal investigators was Sarah's tactical judgment under extreme pressure while protecting students. Her decision to engage the shooter, rather than rely solely on lockdown procedures, had prevented casualties while demonstrating the kind of tactical competence that characterized the Secret Service's most elite protective units. News of the incident spread throughout educational security and Federal Protective Services communities within hours. Sarah's successful application of Secret Service counter-assault team expertise to school protection demonstrated how elite tactical training could be essential for protecting educational institutions from sophisticated active shooter threats. The story resonated particularly strongly with other Secret Service agents working in civilian protection roles, showing that their specialized training provided capabilities that could be crucial for protecting schools from threats that exceeded conventional security planning. Many federal tactical specialists had felt their expertise wasn't relevant to educational security work, but Sarah's example proved otherwise. Secret Service counter-assault team investigators conducted extensive analysis of the incident, recognizing that schools faced evolving threats that required tactical response capabilities beyond conventional educational security. They wanted to understand how Sarah's federal tactical background had enabled such effective active shooter response and whether her methods could be adapted for other educational institutions requiring enhanced security. Sarah worked closely with Secret Service tactical specialists, FBI active shooter response experts, and educational security coordinators to develop enhanced school protection protocols that incorporated federal tactical principles while maintaining the educational environment that effective learning required. The incident had profound effects on how school districts approached security planning. Sarah's analysis had revealed tactical vulnerabilities that conventional school security assessments had missed, demonstrating that sophisticated active shooter threats required specialized tactical knowledge to identify and counter effectively. More importantly, Sarah's approach had demonstrated that Secret Service counter-assault team expertise could be successfully integrated into educational security operations without militarizing schools or creating fortress-like environments that interfered with the educational mission. Sarah decided to remain in educational security work, but with expanded responsibilities that utilized her unique federal qualifications. The school district hired her as Director of Educational Security and Tactical Response, responsible for developing active shooter response protocols for schools throughout the region. Federal law enforcement agencies maintained Sarah as a consultant for cases involving threats against educational institutions that required Secret Service-level tactical assessment, but her primary focus remained on ensuring that students could continue learning in safe environments without fear of violence disrupting their educational opportunities. Veterans organizations highlighted Sarah's story as an example of how specialized Secret Service training could be successfully applied to civilian roles that served educational security while providing meaningful employment for tactical specialists transitioning from Federal Protective Service. 2 years later, Sarah had revolutionized school security operations for educational institutions requiring sophisticated tactical protection capabilities. Her protocols for active shooter response, threat assessment, and federal coordination had prevented numerous potential incidents while maintaining the educational atmosphere that effective learning required. More importantly, Sarah had demonstrated that Secret Service counter-assault team expertise could enhance school security without creating prison-like restrictions that destroyed the educational environment. Her approach combined tactical competence with genuine understanding of educational requirements and the learning principles that made schools successful for student development. Lincoln High School had become a model for educational security that protected students from active shooter threats while preserving the open, supportive atmosphere that effective education required. Federal law enforcement agencies and school districts nationwide studied Sarah's methods for protecting educational institutions. Detective Maria Santos, who had coordinated with Sarah during the active shooter investigation, often brought new educational security personnel to observe her operations. "This is what professional school security looks like," she would tell them, "not just monitoring student behavior and managing visitors, but understanding tactical threats well enough to prevent violence before it destroys the educational environment that students need for successful learning. Sarah Davis continues her security work in public education, but everyone in the school district now understands that their Director of Educational Security brings something extraordinary to her role. She's the former Secret Service counter-assault team leader who chose educational protection over federal tactical assignments, who understands that protecting students is just as important as conducting protective details for government officials. Her story reminds us that Secret Service expertise developed protecting the nation's highest officials doesn't end when agents leave federal service. It continues in new forms of educational protection that may be less visible but are equally essential to preserving the safe learning environments that allow American students to develop their potential without fear. Sometimes the person ensuring security at American schools carries training from the Secret Service's most elite tactical units, quietly preventing active shooter attacks with skills developed protecting presidents from the world's most dangerous threats. These are the professionals who understand that effective protection requires both tactical competence and genuine commitment to the educational mission that makes schools essential for community success. Sarah's choice to remain in educational security work rather than pursue high-profile federal tactical assignments represents something fundamental about protection, that keeping people safe doesn't require government facilities or classified missions. Sometimes the most valuable protection happens in schools across America, provided by professionals whose expertise ensures that students can focus on learning without fear of violence disrupting their education. The next time you visit a school and notice the security personnel who seem particularly observant and tactically competent, remember Sarah's story. Some of them might just be former Secret Service counter-assault team specialists whose background in federal tactical operations continues to serve and protect one educational community at a time.